Greetings and welcome to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the worlds of Magic the Gathering with me today? I hope you are. Your host and guide here that's going to lead you through the blind eternities into the various worlds of Magic the Gathering. Take my hand as we go through the blind eternities here. We're diving back into history of Magic with the Deck Builder's Toolkit. I hope you're ready. Remember to, of course, tip your guide, who's leading through these blind eternities today, with liking, subscribing, and hitting the bell. Planeswalking! Oh, jeez. Where are we now? Well, we're a little bit near Zendikar, but we're not really there. We're still in the blind eternities. Why? Well, this isn't really a product that's connected to exactly blind. We're talking about the Deck Builder's Toolkit. Boom! So, what is the Deck Builder's Toolkit, and why do you need to know about it? Well, interestingly enough, this is a special box set that was released in May 21st, 2010. This is the first product that came out post Rise of the Eldrazi. It contained 100 basic lands, 20 of each type that are all of M10 variety. So that's going to be an important part about here. It's all cards from other sets. We'll talk about this. There was 85 fixed cards in here, 8 of which were uncommon, 77 which were common, 4 out of 11 different strategy packs with 6 commons and 4 uncommons each, and then 4 15-card booster packs from recent sets. So you did have some rares in here, just not a large amount of rares. It also included a deck builder's guide with tips about the best Magic decks, learn how to play guide, and full art reusable card storage box. It also did show up in Japanese. Now there's a picture of the box as it was. And because this had cards from, remember, as I said, we're talking about it, other sets too, and being also kind of random and semi-random, it didn't have a set expansion on its own. It uses a set expansion symbols of the cards that are in it. So that's a very interesting fact. And the fact is also, this was the first in the line of Deck Builder's Toolkits. This wouldn't be the last one we'd have. In fact, there would be many Deck Builder's Toolkits after this to come. I'll have to talk about all of them as we go, but this is the first of many. Now, again, all the cards here, fixed and semi-random, are all from M10, Zendikar, Worldwake, and of course the one that just came out, Rise of the Eldrazi. So from those 4 sets is where we get the fixed cards, the semi-random cards, and in fact, the booster packs. So we are building it out of standard. This is a standard box. And whatever booster packs you got, that's where you get your rares for this. And a refreshed version of this would come out in the next year. So, yeah. 85 fixed cards, and then 100 basic lands. Pretty big set of cards in here overall. Plus then, of course, the strategy packs and booster packs. Let's talk about the content in this, though, too. Because now that we have an idea of where these cards come from, let's start with the uncommons that were in the fixed content. What I mean by fixed content is these were cards that were in here always. In white, you had Harm's Way, which is an instant, you redirect damage. Pretty decent for an uncommon. Not a really great uncommon, but I think it's okay. Sarah's Angel, a very classic uncommon. Flying Vigilance, 4/4. It's one that's been out for a very long time, since Unlimited. Has a lot of preprints. I think it was originally rare, but it became uncommon. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly from Unlimited, but again, that's me trying to remember off the top of my head, not really doing any research. Wink, wink. But Sarah Angel's a pretty decent white. From blue, Mind Control, controlling a creature. It's not as good as Control Magic was in certain ways, but it's not a bad card. Sleep. I do like Sleep a lot. This is one that's one of those uncommons that I actually do say is actually pretty good uncommon to have in a lot of things. Tap all creature target player's control. They don't untap during that player's next untap step. You do that on an opponent on your turn, get an attack in where they can't block. Next turn, they can't untap. You get another one where you can take advantage of that. Sleep's very good in a lot of ways, especially on 1v1. Mind Sludge. This one, target player discards a card for swamp you control. If you're playing a straight black deck, this can be pretty good for discard, especially if they have If they're going to get someone that has a lot of cards in hand, if they don't, not as helpful, but still, it's not terrible. It's kind of in that middle ground. Dragonwhelp, a classic dragon type with fire-breathing ability where they can pump mana into them. If they activate 4 more times, you kill it, but still, nonetheless, you get bigger, you do some extra damage. It's a flyer. And Prodigal Pyromancer, it's a Timmy in red. It's tap and deal with 1 damage to target creature or player. It's actually a color-shifted Timmy. I think I've talked about this. The Prodigal Sorcerer, aka Timmy, as it's colloquially known. Prodigal Sorcerer and Prodigal Pyromancer, they're just color-shift versions, same thing. I think it's a little bit more appropriate for it. I don't know. But it's classic and pretty good in a lot of ways. Overrun, I'm not gonna lie, Overrun's a very good classic spell. Creatures you control get 5/5/5 and trample. It can be a game ender, and it's only an uncommon. So Overrun's another one of those ones that I'm like, yeah, this is a very good uncommon spell. And they have it. And of course, then we go into the commons that I did want to point out some commons here that are pretty good, that they're giving you in the fixed ones. Ulamog's Crusher, it's Annihilator 2, attacks each turn table. It's expensive, it's an Eldrazi. I talked a little bit about this in the Eldrazi stuff with Rise of Eldrazi, but it's not bad for a common. From White, Pacifism and Soul Warden are 2 that I would point out. Pacifism's a classic enchantment that just shuts 1 creature down, and Soul Warden, if you're playing and gaining a lot of creatures, you're gaining a lot of life. From Blue, Cancel, it's Counterspell. It's if you're not using the spell Counterspell, which is cheaper, but they really haven't reprinted it in a lot of places, Cancel is the next best thing, and Divination is the other thing. Both of those are just decent staples in Blue that a lot of decks that are built around still using commons and uncommons would use. Doomblade and Sign in Blood for black. Again, these are just staples. 1, destroy target non-black creature, and the other one, drawing 2 cards for the cost of 2 life. These are just really good cards in a lot of ways, and they are solid commons. We turn to red, Lava Axe and Lightning Bolt. Now, Lava Axe, I like putting it here just because I always find Lava Axe funny. It's just 5 mana, deal 5 damage to target player. It's a pretty good just chunk of opponent's life. But Lightning Bolt is the classic. It deals 3 damage to a target for 1 mana. It's been around since Unlimited. It is one of the best burn spells there is. You can never get wrong with Lightning Bolt here. From green, Llanowar Elves, Naturalized. Llanowar Elves, of course, the classic mana production elves. Again, since around Unlimited, there's been a lot of mana producing elves. It's the classic, and Naturalized, it does what a good thing with green does. Gets rid of artifacts and enchantments. Kite Sail is in here, which is a pretty simple equipment. This is the main equipment that they have here, unless we talk about the semi-randomized part here. This is the only artifact that's in the fixed content, which is also another interesting thing. And it's not a bad one, giving something +1/+1 and flying. And there are some non-basic lands. Terramorphic Expanse, which is very good for multicolored decks. Terramorphic Expanse and its its other version that we talked about in Rise of the Eldrazi that exists. The Evolving Wilds. Both of them basically doing the same thing, being both very good. Now let's talk about the strategies. So, there were 11 of these 10-card strategies. These 10-card strategies, which I'm showing off the 4 uncommons here of the first one. We'll talk about all of them. Basically, it was the semi-random one. Out of the 11 that you could possibly get, if I bought the Deck Builder's Toolkit, I did 4 of them. Now, all the strategies were outlined in the poster here, so you know about each of these strategies. You just get 4 of them. And these 4 were separated by your Terramorphic Expanses, which I just showed. Now again, I'm not mentioning the commons here, I'm just showing off the uncommons here. This was the Elves one, which gives us the, of course, Greenweave Druid, basically a buffed up Llanowar Elves, an extra Overrun, very good, and a couple more pieces of equipment. Ogre Cleaver, which does a lot of extra damage, and Pennon Blade, which, if you have a lot of creatures, gets one of your creatures very big. These aren't terrible uncommons. As I said, I would probably more prefer Pennon Blade Overrun over the 2 of these, but this, combined with a lot of the other common elves that were in this strategy, was a pretty good part for building onto an elf strategy. Then there was also a blue-white flyer strategy, they called it. But I feel like this is a blue-white hard-to-block strategy more, because we have on the bottom there Phantom Warrior and Centurion Merfolk, which both are more trying not to be blocked kind of things, which is very interesting. But anyway, we have another Sarah Angel, the Living Tsunami that you get 2 lands back in your hand. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of landfall in this one, so I can't really say it was really great there. Phantom Warrior, who's unblockable, and of course the Centurion Merfolk that if you have planes, it's First Strike and Lifelink. It's made for blue-white. And First Strike and Lifelink makes something scary to block. You don't want to block this stuff. That's I feel like that's more the strategy, but they called blue-white flyer strategy. There was a blue control strategy. This was a very interesting one. It gave us, with an uncommon with Air Elemental, basically that's probably your good blocker, an extra copy of Mind Control, so now you have 2 of them. And then for your other cards in here, a Summoner's Bane, where you can counter spell and get an illusion. And of course, the Wall of Frost for more defensive, where if it blocks a thing, it doesn't untap it. Here's the thing here. It has some kind of control. It's not control like steel control. It has a little bit of that. It's control more on the I'm controlling the board. You have to think of it as blue control, which is a classic blue strategy. It's just when you talk about control, you often think about like stealing creatures and cards and stuff like that. Interestingly enough, we had red. It was burn. It's as simple as that. So it had more cards to add to your ability to burn. Of course, Explosive Revelation, where you reveal something from the top of your library until you reveal a non-land card, and this does damage equal to it. A very classic from the Zendikar block that I saw. Fireball, a classic spell that can do multiple targets. Of course, you have Lust for War here, where it basically makes so if someone doesn't want to tap a creature, but it also has to attack each turn if able. Put it on something that you're not going to block and you don't care about, and let it just do its damage. And of course, Rod of Ruin. That's classic. Pay mana, tap to do damage. This is just building on stuff that was established in the red deck, the red cards I kind of talked about. You had this white meanie kind of thing, which had like enchantments and stuff to boost stuff. Of course, Armored Ascension gives a creature +1/+1 for each planes and has flying. Armored Ascension is decent for an uncommon. It's not super great. I think it's a pretty good one. Brave the Elements can be a very good one, where you give all your creatures protection from the color until end of turn. That can be both defensive and offensive, especially if you're playing against a single color. Elite Vanguards, it's an uncommon in this era. Yeah, same could be said for Core Firewalker. It's very anti-red. It's more of a sideboard card. I feel like this one, it does add things like an extra Soul Ward and some other things that can boost soldiers. This is not a great deck. It's more a fine deck. Or fine strategy that you can build off. Remember, these are 10-card strategies that you're adding probably 30 cards from the rest of the pre-made, the fixed ones you had to build a deck. Green had a mana ramp deck. Go figure. Frontier Guide, of course, allowing you to search for basic lands, putting them in the battlefield tap for 4 mana. I like Frontier Guide. I've used it in a number of places before. Not as much as more, but I have. Howl the Night Pack I've definitely used before in decks. You get Wolves for your forests. Palaka Worm, I talked about. I like Palaka Worm more in graveyard-related decks, but in this case, it's still not a bad thing. It's still 7/7 that you gain 7 life when it comes to the battlefield, and if it dies, you get a card. You can replace it. And of course, Whisperspell Cloak, making something unblockable and having it have Shroud, where it can't be the target spells or abilities, is very good. Whisperspell Cloak is always a very good one to throw out there for a uncommon equipment. The Vampire strategy, in fact, I looked into this, had 5 uncommons. I don't know why this is 5 uncommons, but these 5 cards here were uncommon during this time period where these versions of them would be printed. I could not quite figure out why. Arrogant Bloodlord is uncommon, and if it becomes blocked by creature or less than with power 1 or less, it gets destroyed. So if your opponent doesn't have any small creatures, you can just keep attacking and you don't really worry. But if it does, well... of course, Consume Spirit, where you can only use black mana. Hey, it's a vampire deck, it's a black deck. Deals X damage target player, creature player, you gain that much life. Of course, we have Feast of Blood, where you can only cast it if you have 2 or more vampires. It's a vampire deck, or a vampire strategy, and there technically was some, I think at least 1 or 2 vampires up in the there's at least there's Children of Night up in the set, so you can get more vampires there. Destroy creature, gain more life. Gatekeeper of Malakir is also another uncommon as kicker, basically forcing the player to sacrifice a card. And of course, Vampire Nighthawk is a classic, a 2/3 flying death touch lifelink. I'm sorry, it has always been one of those really great uncommons. Vampire Nighthawk, not gonna lie. Black Red had a destruction version with Marsh Casualties, with a kicker where creatures target player control get -1/-1. If you kicked it, those creatures get -2/-2. Kills off a bunch of creatures. Of course, Quest for a Gravelord, a quest counter with creatures dying. You put counters on it. If there's 3 or more, you get rid of creature. It's the kind of thing that if you murder a bunch of creatures, you get stuff back. Rise from the Grave, getting you creatures back from your graveyard. And of course, for red, here we have Goblin Artillery, where you can deal damage to a creature or player and do 3 damage to yourself. It's the I need to get rid of some small creature card. You're probably not going to, or my opponent is in a worse spot than me. I can do some damage. I can trade some health. There's a green and red aggro deck. Hey, green-red! Woo! Bestial Menace creates a bunch of tokens. Creates a snake, a wolf, and an elephant. Classic kind of one there. The Summit Apes. If you control a mountain, it can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. Pretty simple there. And then, of course, the Valakut Fireboar. When it attacks, switches power and toughness until end of turn. It's a 1/7. So it's a 1/7 until it attacks, and then it becomes a 7/1. And of course, the Trusty Machete as a equipment, where creature just gets +2/+1. It's pretty simple. It's a little boosting equipment. Not super great, not super terrible, just kind of in there in the middle. I think that's the thing about a lot of uncommons. They are just uncommons, and you usually, like, depending on if you're building a deck, you can use uncommons. And some of these you're going to look at and be like, oh, I could use that in a deck. Yeah, I think that's the point of talking about this. Over here in the green-white auras, it's, hey, an Umbral, Totem/Umbra deck. Remember, these will say Totem armor on them. That's now Umbral armor. So, change the term on it. But, Mammoth Umbra being the +3/+3, and Vigilance, of course, there. Boar Umbra being +3/+3. And Umbral armors, if they get destroyed, the enchantment's destroyed instead. Canopy Cover here as an enchantment. It can't block, can't be blocked except by creatures with flying or reach. Can't be the target of spells or abilities opponent control, so hexproof too. And of course, the Nature's Spiral over there, returning a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand, getting something back. That's always good, especially in green-white, where you don't have as much graveyard resurrection. And the last strategy you could get is an Eldrazi strategy. Yeah. Hey, there was an Eldrazi in that last one. Hey, we're dealing with a Zendikar. Hey, Eldrazi. Artisan of Kozilek is a pretty standard one there. When you cast a spell, you may turn a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's expensive, but you get something back. It's an Annihilator. The Path Razors here, where it can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. Another Annihilator. Yeah. The, of course, Rapacious one here, where it's a 5/4 trample. If it deals combat damage to a player, you create that many colorless Eldrazi spawn. Eldrazi spawn give you bigger and more Eldrazi. Hey, there you go. And of course, Dreamstone Hedron, where you tap it to get 3 colorless mana. It's a Eldrazi deck, or Eldrazi strategy to build into an Eldrazi deck. It's as simple as that. You're probably going to be playing a at least red, maybe red-green, I would say, just for some mana ramp or something. That's kind of the question there, but yeah. But that's what was in the Deck Builder's Toolkit. I wanted to talk about some of the cards here because it's an interesting idea that I want to say that, you know, most of the time I'm talking about cards, I'm talking about a lot of rares and such like that, or various kind of groupings of cards, which makes sense. But this is an opportunity to basically say, like, hey, there's a bunch of commons and uncommons, and many of them are pretty good. Soul Warden is pretty damn good. If I'm playing a green-white token deck, and I got 2 Soul Wardens out, I have a lot of life. And they're commons. Just think about it. An entire huge strategy, part of my entire play, could be built up of commons very easily. So I think that's why I do want to talk about these things like the Deck Builders Toolkits and interesting products like this, because they all do build on what Magic Gathering, especially during this time period, was providing with you. And this stuff here showed off a bunch of cards from the last sets of Standard and allows you to build some very simple decks. Yeah, you're not going to have a lot of rares. You, in fact, only have 4 rares from the or booster packs that are in here. But you have a bunch of lands to start a deck. You have a bunch of fixed cards. You have 4 of these strategies, all of which are, honestly, pretty decent. Some of them I feel like are better than others for some of the strategies, looking at the cards in them, especially when I'm talking about the uncommons there. But all the strategies are viable for a deck. And it gets you started on something for building a deck. And then I get some more packs and throw some more stuff in there and build upon the deck I'm starting. That's why it's a Deck Builder's Toolkit. It gets you started on it. And this one, I feel like did a pretty good job of it. I think it did. Alright, I'll leave it there. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Deck Builder's Toolkit, the first of the series. And I don't know how into depth I will go on about some of the other series in the more of these in the future. This first one, I did a much bigger video than I think I will in the future in a lot of ways. But there's a lot of interesting things here and little interesting concepts that are very helpful. This is a very good, honestly, beginner's product in a lot of ways. Because my first deck, your first deck, isn't going to have a lot of rares, is probably going to be built more on commons and uncommons. And figuring out some strategies, understanding some strategies, especially in the current standard of play, is incredibly helpful to those early players. Is this your first stuff? No, this might be your, like, second step along the way of into your early Magic days. It's sort of like, I know Magic now, I've started it, this is my way of building some interesting stuff and diving into the kind of standard play stuff. That's, I feel like, what I think it's good. Anyway, I went on about some more stuff that I normally do not on my outro, but okay. Anyway, if you want to see more of my stuff, you really do, I have a schedule out. I put up that schedule every week, usually on Monday. That schedule goes up on my social medias, my Discord, my Blue Sky, my Twitter/X, and I also do put up on my YouTube in the discussion page and then about page where you can put up stuff there. That gives all the stuff of when I'm going to either be live on Twitch or uploading stuff over on YouTube. YouTube schedule is very exact, pretty exact. Only changes around if there's an issue with a video or issue with an upload that I've got to like move things around, and then there's, you know, it's usually just going to be the next opening on the next day. I don't push things very far, but usually just the schedule for YouTube is pretty exact. The Twitch schedule is a little bit more malleable just because of life stuff. But that's like usually when I'm going to be recording tabletop stuff, streaming games, doing any kind of other stuff. That's where my live plays goes up, which I recommend. You check out my live plays of TTRPGs. Go check them out. That's D&D, Pathfinder, World of Darkness I've done. Check out Discussing Tabletop, where we talk about news of the week, more deeper discussions, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's a shout out. Hey, did any of you out there have Deck Builder's Toolkit? I don't think I had any of these, ever. I think because the fact is, I read up on what was in them. You could, like, understand what was in them, and none of them really I needed. Again, because I didn't need any beginner stuff, especially by the time I got it. But it is interesting to see what was in them and what was provided. So let me know if any of you out there ever got one of these, especially this first one. But anyway, I'm going to go and go hang out with Twitch chat. Maybe we'll chat about some of these things and reminisce about Magic. Maybe I'll do another video. But until that next time that we chat and dive into all this, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.